takes a lot of work to look this good.
Do we have these?
I said it takes a lot of work to look this good. Actually, I prefer this one.
I'd like to call this meeting together, please, for September the 19th. I'd like to welcome everybody, and if you wish to speak during the hearing of citizens, please pick up a card in the back of the chambers, print your name and topic, and return the card to our board assistant, Zoe Marshall. At the appropriate time, I will call you up. We will begin with the flag salute under the direction of Fernando Garcia from Riverview High Color Guard.
Are they
Forward. March.
Oh, never mind.
Colors. Halt. Post the colors. Present. Arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Forward. March.
I'd like to introduce our student representative, Cassie Henderson from Riverview High School. Welcome back, Cassie. Can you please share with us who is one of your favorite teachers and why?
Yes.
Turn your mic.
Sorry. Yes. One of my favorite teachers would have to be Miss Curtis. I say that because she's very nice and understanding of everything that you go through during school, and I've had her for 3 years. Also, she keeps everything very organized, so it's very easy for you to be able to know what's coming up, and you're able to plan ahead because she gives you a schedule of everything.
That's great.
Yes.
Thank you. Under special presentations, I would just like to make a notation that yesterday was Constitution Day, and Americans celebrated the 230th anniversary of the framing of our Constitution. Our founding fathers signed this magnificent document on September 17, 1787, in Philadelphia. What a legacy of freedom they gave us, a unique document that guarantees rights to every American. Constitution Week is celebrated September 17th to the 23rd. This tradition was started in 1955 by the Daughters of the American Revolution, who petitioned Congress to set aside this week annually for the observance of Constitution Week. Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President. Florida Governor Rick Scott issued a beautiful Constitution Week proclamation, and Venice Mayor John Hollick and Sarasota also did. As Daniel Webster stated, God grants liberty only to those who love it and always ready to guard and defend it. We, the people, must preserve and protect our Constitution for future generations. The Constitution stands as an icon of freedom for people around the world. I urge you to read and study this great document, which is the basis of America's great heritage and the foundation of the way of life, liberty, and freedom America enjoys. Thank you. Dr. Superintendent, do you have any?
Well, it has been quite the 2 weeks since we last gathered here. I believe when we last gathered, we were contemplating that there may be a storm in the offing and considering the cancellation of school on Friday purely as a precautionary event, assuming that the storm would mostly be an East Coast event for the state of Florida. And, well, how wrong we were. As we started the school year, one of our overarching themes was Hattie's work on instructional strategies. And so you will see banners and T-shirts and different things that our staff is wearing that says, "Know thy impact." And I think our impact changed a little bit in the last 2 weeks, but what a great slogan we'll have to repurpose is that we've had an impact on this community, which is a lot different than what we contemplated. At the height of the storm, we had 14 of our schools open and 18,838 evacuees. And the storm shelters were staffed by and large with school district personnel, supplemented with county staff to include the Sheriff's Department, Department of Health, and the National Guard was of great assistance to us. But what an incredibly humbling experience if you talk to everyone who had a role in the storm. There was preparation, and then you move from preparation to just pure survival, and then from survival to recovery. But to be where we are this morning, I think we all have a great sense of pride in the service that we provided to this community. I want to thank all of you who were in attendance as we had a chance to gather Friday afternoon and hear the stories from the 14 different shelters. But what I was most struck by is you would never wish this on a community and you would never wish this on a school district, but the impact it has had is a very positive one. We have come together in ways that you just couldn't contemplate. The unity, the bonds, people will be talking years from now, what shelter did they work? They've made friendships that they will refer back to. They have groups that they're communicating with now. They've made connections. And one of the things they've said is, as you begin to do an after action and look at the effects of the storm and what you might do different next time, can you start with these teams? I'm on Team Philippi or I'm on Team Gulfgate, and can you just make sure that our team gets back together again? The outpouring from the community, I've received email after email, every single one of them positive about the experience that they had in our schools. There's one particular incident that's received a lot of attention, and you may be aware of Tatum Ridge as a patients with special needs shelter, and quite honestly, I won't throw the word hero around too much, but the efforts of that staff were downright heroic. There were lives at stake. And so we have a video that we want to present to you. I've asked Scott to do a short introduction to it. And then we also have just a collection of photographs that just, as school board members, I just want you to be proud of your district and what we accomplished. Scott?
So that's the introduction. Todd used the word hero. I think you would see heroic efforts across the spectrum. I think about what our bus drivers did to get these patients to Tatum Ridge. I think about if you watched Barry Dunn and Stephen Covert on The View on Friday, you heard them talk about some of the things they did. You hear about what the custodial staff did just to keep people going. You'll see the sheriff's role, the deputies at the shelter, and some of the things that they did at this shelter, the health department who was hands-on with the patients. I mean, the list of heroes in a very true sense goes on, but I agree with Dr. Bowden that Tatum Ridge really was kind of a unique experience. So we're going to show you the short video that gives you just a peek under the tent as to what life was like at Tatum Ridge and some of the amazing things that school board, county, and sheriff staff did to keep people safe.
See here is admin team that was assigned to work the special needs hurricane shelter here at Tatum Ridge. We opened Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and the minute we opened the doors, we had buses pulling up. We had lots of people being dropped off, some with caregivers, some with not. I even think well into the night, I heard that 1 a.m. our last bus pulled up at some point. So we were basically packing this place as the day went on, prepping for the storms. Once the storm hit, we were sort of bunkered down. We told everybody to be in their rooms and safe. And I couldn't even tell you what time it was because I lost track of any sort of timeline. I don't even know what day it was, but Sunday night, obviously. When the storm hit, we're hunkered down and our generator blew.
We started kind of brainstorming. We started calling emergency EOC. They indicated that we have a county ops component, and they inquired to see if we had a generator.
There was a 4-man team. It was 2 school board employees, Dale from facilities, Kurt Weaver from facilities, and then we had 2 that were just volunteers. One of them is the husband of my assistant principal, Chris Knaus. He's an electrician, just had some knowledge of generators. And another gentleman, Pete Petrovich, was a spouse of a teacher's aide at Oak Park, I think, who happened to be sheltering here. And so the 4 of them with raincoats ran out to the generator in the height of the storm.
But from mid-afternoon on Saturday through the next morning, that's the time period when it was most severe, most serious, most dangerous. And if there was a medal that you could give for public service, a gentleman named Kurt Weaver.
I didn't even come back. This is the first I've been back here. I'll tell you right now, there was no doubt in my mind I was going out and looking at that generator. None. Thank God I was in the Army and that was my job. Diesel engines. I mean, I wouldn't have known. I would have never known what to do. Yeah, you can see them down there. Whoops, I'm sorry. The generator down there. Would I help somebody? Yes. But I would have never said no. Never. That ain't even in my category.
The problem, though, is that we didn't know how many people that generator would hold on power. So we came up with a game plan that what we were going to do with all the school representatives and nurses, county ops, Pike from FPL, the law enforcement, and the fire department that was here. Our game plan was that the head nurse was going to go upstairs and get the most critical patients. We were going to house all law enforcement and fire and rescue on the stairwell.
Is that a lot of the patients were upstairs. So the first responders, they were staging here. They had to stage here for the storm to die down and then get out and clean, like the tree trimmers, the EMTs, the police officers. They were all, once they had to come off the road when the winds hit 45, they had to be here with their trucks out back. When all this went down, these are the guys that were carrying patients down the stairwell.
And literally in this cafeteria, we ran cords, huge, thick extension cords with extension boxes and began moving patients from upstairs in the dark down here to the cafeteria.
So on top of that, when the generator kicked back on, we had about 25 people on battery-operated oxygen tanks. So that gave it enough charge that it kept lasting us through the night. So it really was an effort that getting that generator to keep popping on. We had the gas powered, making sure these people were okay, but that generator popping on, the fact that Kurt went out there, a dozen times through all the hurricane, just to make sure that it would keep kicking on, just to give those battery oxygenated packs a little bit more life is what lasted us through the night.
The cafeteria is sort of the main hub. We're serving meals down here. People are hanging out playing cards. They're just, it was kind of like the area to just kind of hang out. So at one point there was a gentleman that was an evacuee here, and he jumped up on the piano and started playing some music, and the next thing you know, there's a couple people hanging out around there. One of the nurses is up there. They're singing along. They're dancing. It was just kind of one of those moments where, hey, we're getting through this thing together.
In this situation, people came together, whether it was administrators, whether it was custodians, nurses, whatever your title was in this point, our color, race, language, anything, everybody united and basically did what they could do.
And I just get chills thinking about it. We all used whatever skill set we had to help. And it didn't matter if we were on the clock. It didn't matter if that was our skill set. I mean, every single one of us just, we're all going to get flashbacks.
That happened all the time,
Community.
It was a pretty severe situation. I mean, without the power, these people could possibly have died. And we needed everyone's assistance in order to accomplish what we were able to accomplish.
I'll pause here for your comments, and then we do have one item of business that I'd like to conduct kind of under Hurricane Irma. But
Mrs. Brown?
You know, when you first heard, oh, we're going to have evacuation shelters, everyone thinks, well, it's your neighbors that are going down there, and they're people just like us that are going down there. And yes, there were a lot of people just like us. I didn't realize how many special needs people that we had, and identified special needs people that we took care of. But there were a lot of unidentified special needs people, which kind of surprised me that kind of were dropped off, not at our special needs shelters, but at some of our other shelters, and how all of our people, we had to step up and do things that definitely were not in our skill set. And I know I actually heard a complaint from somebody who was at a shelter I was at that was not a school shelter, it was a business shelter, said, you know, I tried to take my grandmother and drop her off at the shelter, and they said, no, you know, she has special needs, she needs a caregiver with her. And he goes, so he couldn't drop his grandmother off there, so he ended up taking her someplace else. But I'm thinking, how many people just dropped somebody off at the door and expected us to take care of them, which is something I really hadn't thought about. But in addition to the special needs, I mean, where do you think the homeless people went? There was evacuations from drug treatment facilities and young mothers with babies. There was just so many things that we had to do, but we did it, and I think basically without negative incidents. And by and large, I mean, we weren't trained for this, or we weren't, the district wasn't. I wasn't at a shelter. I didn't, I mean, after hearing y'all talk that Friday night, I kind of felt I missed out on something. But it's amazing, and the amount of work that had to be put into that, and how y'all worked straight through, you know, and we can't even say it wasn't 48 hours, it was much longer than that. But also that some people say, well, why don't we open up schools on Tuesday or Wednesdays? I mean, we had to clean up those shelters. We didn't have electricity every place. And we also just couldn't even send, we can't send the special needs people home unless they have a home to go to that has electricity. So I think it was Friday at 3 o'clock, the last evacuee left. So there was a lot of work that we did after the storm left, and I would imagine you've got to clean up that field that you messed up with that truck and knocked down those fences. But there was just a lot of things we hadn't planned for that we stood up, and I am just so proud to be in a district that not only does so much great things for the students, but does so much for our community, and I'm just so proud of all of you.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Well, I first want to, I really a heartfelt thank you to everyone in the district that came out, and I just think this speaks volumes and is a testament to the human spirit, because I know our operations, our facilities, and our logistics are above the best that I've ever seen in some of the most sophisticated enterprises in the private sector, and so I know that we are equipped in a number of ways when it comes to serving our students and our community, but this was a eye-opening experience, and I think it really put us to the test. But I just think the stories hearing on Friday and hearing just about how everyone came together and just responded to the needs of our community, but not just our community, people who are all around the state. And I'm very, very proud. I certainly there's always opportunities to learn, but I think that we really do want to continue to just thank everyone who showed up and really ultimately sacrificed. I don't forget everyone has their own families too. So and that you were able to come and be there and represent the district, but support our community. I think it means so much, and I keep hearing great things about it, and a heartfelt thank you. And I want to say thank you to Geckos for providing that opportunity for everyone to come together and just talk and share those stories, because while I know it was immensely stressful, but it was a good opportunity to kind of unwind. But again, very, very proud of the work for everyone. So thank you very much.
Mrs. Goodwin.
Well, I also want to say thank you to the superintendent for doing a great job, Dr. Bowden. I know that you've developed some new relationships with the county, with the EOC, and with others, and that's a good thing. And I also want to commend our staff. Scott Limpy, I know you were out there, I don't know where, but you were probably doing things that are not in your job description. And I know Steve and Roy and others, Mitzi, I just can't say thank you enough. Sonia, to our staff, because I would like to be a part of the team next time, because I live alone and I had no power for about 5 days. So I would be willing to go out and help. But it was just such a great effort, and it was such a wonderful event to go. And again, thank you to Geckos for hosting us on Friday evening to hear some of the stories. But that's how we build relationships, and that's how the administrators who maybe are in Sarasota and don't know that many administrators in Northport find themselves in Northport and developing a relationship there. So I just want to thank them, and I also want to thank the county. But there's been some conjecture about why we didn't have a shelter in Venice. I think it was 2006 or 7, I attended a meeting with Gary Norris, who was at that time the superintendent, in Venice, to talk to folks in Venice about rebuilding Venice High School off the island, just for one of these reasons, was for the ability to use that as a shelter. And the community was very adamant about no, we want it rebuilt where it is. So I think at some point in time we have to look at the central part of the county and see where we can find some opportunities for shelters. But I'll tell you, the northern part of the county and the southern part of the county did us proud. I have a new friend in my portable AM/FM solar grinding radio, and it was just wonderful to have that for a number of days when you're by yourself with a parrot squeaking and a dog, and listen to the radio. And I tuned in one night to Punta Gorda, and there was a man talking about his experience in a Sarasota County shelter. And he was from Charlotte County, and he was just treated so beautifully and so well, and how much he appreciated it. And so I really think that we did ourselves proud. We did our community proud. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart.
Mr. Robinson?
In my office, we had a lot of discussions about what the school district did for our community, because the school board is lucky to get the support of the community. But this was one of those rare opportunities where we were able to go out and show support to our community. And part of the discussion that we talked about centered around the staff, and how these were principals, these were former school teachers, and how were they able to rise to the occasion. And my partner, Sydney Young, she's probably mad at me for saying her name, she said, Eric, they're not educational leaders, they're leaders. Mm-hmm. She said they manage people. They make decisions all day long, whether they're financial, people are trusting the greatest assets to them. They're almost a shelter every day of the week, Eric. This shouldn't be a surprise to you that these people can make these type of decisions. And so, and it affects me up here, because when you're up here making decisions, you realize we can trust our principals to make those type of decisions. We can push those decisions down to them, because time and time again, they have shown us, no matter what the situation, even if we haven't contemplated it, they're going to use their judgment to make the right decision for not just them, not for the school, but for our entire community. So I just wanted to say thank you.
There's not too much left for me to say, except thank you to everyone. And I wish that Sonia could share her experiences, because Friday night she was hilarious telling us what she went through. She had over 140 homeless people were at the shelter she was at. And what was really neat about it is that if you were at Riverview, you were shipped to Northport, so we were doing cross training with our staff. And I think that made for a much better connection, because people who didn't know know each other that well now do. And there's a bond that's been formed that will be fantastic. And it'll be hard for anyone to break that bond, because you can't. Once you go through something like they all went through, you can't help but support each other, because you're tied together as a one instead of all separate little units around the country. So thank you again for all of you. Really appreciate everything that this community did and this school system. I am so proud to be a member and to be chair this time. I am really proud of all of you. Thank you.
So we have some remaining items of business. The first is to conduct a thorough after-action review. There's certainly a lot that we did right, and there's some things we could do better. And so we need to learn from this experience. I hope we have learned some rich lessons that we never get to apply, but we need to be ready. And so we're going to do a thorough after-action, and we'll prepare those items and bring it to the board and get some additional feedback. So we've initiated that process. That process is underway. We need to have a celebration. We had a chance to kind of gather impromptu on Friday, but we need to have a wider circle and include everyone who was involved. And so we've started to throw some ideas around. We've already had some folks reach out to us and say they'd be willing to underwrite the cost of kind of a company picnic or some sort of event where we could get the custodians and the food service workers and transportation and, the principals and everyone together and just kind of celebrate. And so we want to make sure that we do that. Probably the most pressing question as we sit here today is, what about those 6 days of school? And so we missed 6 days of instruction due to Hurricane Irma. And so we've done some research. The state defines a school year as 180 days of instruction. And so at this point, if we followed our existing calendar, we're at 174 days of instruction. But there is an alternate definition which defines a school year as 900 hours of instruction. And we are very fortunate in this community that we have an additional 30 minutes per day, which gives us a bank of 90 hours, which does give us some flexibility here. And so we have looked at our calendar. Our calendar includes 2 hurricane makeup days. One of them is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The other is the day after the end of school. And if you set as a goal that we would try to use those days with the idea that we wanted to recapture instructional time, I just don't believe that those 2 days would accomplish those objectives. We are certainly within our rights to call school on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I think you'd have about half the students there and maybe half of the staff. People have plans. We published a calendar that said they'd be out at the end of the day on Tuesday. And I'm not sure what May 25th does for us instructionally. It falls after every major assessment program from the state to IB to ACE to International Baccalaureate. So my recommendation is that we use those time from the referendum. We can deliver a full school year without scheduling any makeup days. Actually, looking at the calendar, we have the same amount of days that falls in front of our major assessment program as we did last week because we started a week early, so that kind of works in our favor. And so that's a decision that I think the community needs to hear. It's the kind of the burning question, what about those 6 days? And so based on your input this evening, my decision would be is that we do not make up those 6 days, but we return to our instructional focus and get the most out of the hours that remain.
Do you need us to vote on this, or do you need us just to say yes?
I do not. There's no formal action required because you've approved a calendar. If I were coming to you and asking days to be added to the calendar, it would require formal action. But this is a big decision that I didn't want to make in isolation, so I just wanted to kind of lay the facts out there for you, is that we will comfortably reach the state definition of a full school year of 900 hours without rescheduling these 6 days. We have informed SCTA as well as reach out to our principals that we would be having this conversation, and they are in agreement that although we would like to recoup those 6 days of instructional time, that of the available options, I really don't think we have options available to us that reach that objective.
I agree. Mrs. Brown?
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful opportunity that we have. I mean, I don't know what other districts are doing, and maybe the governor will grant us a waiver, but I know that Houston is also doing this. They're adding time onto their calendars. Their days, not their days. They're adding hours on, and I think since we already have this half hour, to be able to use this like this, I mean, didn't expect us to be able to, but I think it's a wonderful thing. I think if you listen really, really close, you can hear some cheers coming from across the street at some of our schools. I think this is the best idea that we can do for our students and our teachers and our community, our parents too, because I know I've made plans.
Mrs. Ziegler?
I was going to say, you're probably the most popular superintendent in the entire state right now because of that. No, and I agree. I think that, certainly 6 days is a significant amount of lost time, both from students, instructional time, but I also think of the crunch that teachers feel that they have to hit on time and cover all of this curriculum in a set time. And so I hope that is probably maybe felt with mixed emotion, but I think the way you evaluated it the day before Thanksgiving and the day after the end of school, I agree. I don't know that would achieve what we would be seeking. But also, I thank you for bringing it up to us to discuss. While I know it doesn't require a formal board vote, I appreciate it being discussed up here. But I agree. I think that you're making the right decision. So,
Mrs. Goodwin?
I too agree. I think that it's a great thing that we're in a position that we can make this work without going into more days. We had such an issue with starting school earlier this year, and I think that anything that we can do to keep the calendar and keep consistent for our teachers, for our staff, for our students, without making changes is a good thing. And I think it shows a real good effort on behalf of our teachers and our classified workers that, we're going to make this work without involving their paycheck or without making changes. I think that's no small effort on your part and Mrs. Cochran to make sure that we had the storm pay and that we had the ability to take those things into consideration, because we had a lot of people putting out a lot of effort. We had a lot of custodians who were working very, very hard during the storm and then afterwards to clean the schools up. So I think this shows a lot of good faith on our part, and I think it's a wonderful way of handling it. So I agree.
Mr. Robinson?
I agree. Think that is the right thing to do. I do want to thank Mitzi Corcoran also that Jane did about making sure that we have funding to pay for it. I just have one slight disagreement. I think those 6 days were instructional. Yeah. When my son saw that his iPhone ran out of batteries and he could not charge it, the look on his face when I told him he's got to go outside because there's no electricity in here, there's no TiVo, no Netflix, no Hulu, no television. I think that was an instructional in and of itself.
Now, did he have to go out and play or go out to the car to charge the iPhone?
I did that. No, my phone was being charged. No, he had to go out and clean up debris. That was a whole nother.
Right, learning.
Yeah, and then EJ, my kids actually came in and said, "Why are you sitting in here while we're outside slaving away?" So that was another instructional period that I had explained to him. So it was instructional all the way around. So I think I definitely agree with you, and I agree with Ms. Ziegler that you're probably the most popular superintendent in the state, and definitely in this county. Yeah. So I like the way you thought outside the box and you were creative and problem solving, which goes back to the leadership that we have at our district. So we're not just educator leaders. You've shown that you're a community leader. So thank you, Dr. Bowden.
Congratulations, way to go.
We will communicate that out at the conclusion of today's meeting with ConnectEds and emails and put it on the district website. And I'm sure the kids are texting each other as we speak. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Next is hearing of citizens, and I have no card, so that will not occur. What I'd like to explain to you all is that our computers are down, so we will be doing a voice vote. I'm able to have my queuing thing up so I know who's buzzed in to speak, but that's the only thing that's working up here. So with that, may I have approval of the consent agenda?
Move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Anybody want to second it?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay? The chair votes aye. The next one is the approval to award the RFP 180329 for strategic communication services.
I move for the approval to award RFP 18-0329 for strategic communication services.
I second.
Under discussion? Mrs. Ziegler?
For one of the most important elements, obviously, first and foremost, is the instruction and safety of our students. But I think that as a community, as we've articulated in the previous part, is the community and the participation is so critical to our success. And so ensuring we have clear, constant, and a correct communication and being able to kind of move forward with the evolution of technology and being able to find different ways to reach members of the community is critical and has always been something that I felt was instrumental for us to kind of evolve and strengthen our communications process. So I am very excited. I'm excited about some of the strategic recommendations, and I think that, again, so often we would say that if people don't show up or aren't able to be there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not interested. More than any time that I feel like if you ask people how they are doing, they're going to say they're busy. So we're busier than we've ever been, and so, but that doesn't mean we can't be engaged and can't be reaching our parents and our community members. So I am very, very excited and looking forward to the evolution of the communications team and strategies. So, and I do want to make one other point is I know there's been some restructuring, and so the cost of this has been is not in addition to a previous expenditure, but this was absorbed in some other capacity with some structural changes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mrs. Brown?
I feel I almost have to apologize because I was demanding, Cappy, well, don't we have a plan? I want to see a plan. And I know we'd had a hurricane and all of that, and we didn't get everything out. But I said, I want to have a plan. I want to see a plan. And I was given a copy of the plan yesterday. And looking it over, I mean, I came here willing to actually planning to pick it apart. I'm sorry, I don't have anything to pick apart. It's a good plan. I think we need a advocacy plan, a plan that we need to really be focusing on how to reach out to the community. And not after the fact, telling them why we did something, but working up front and working with the community and really bring true community partners and having that dialogue in ways to have it work both ways. And I really appreciate it, and I can't complain about the plan you've got. And thank you.
Mr. Erickson? Mr. Robinson.
Okay. I really like the fact that we were able to sort of, have a trial probationary period with this organization, because during that period of time, you saw the growth in our communications of the district. You saw the results of having a professional public relations firm firsthand. You saw the organization, the execution, and you could see firsthand the relationship with the media and the Fifth Estate. And so I look forward to now that they're no longer a probationary period, allowing us to communicate our message out more. And so I just want to say thank you to the people at 360 Communications for all the hard work that they've done for the district.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Well, I was a little concerned, and I was really not prepared to vote yes on this piece of new business because I didn't get the copy of the documentation until last night. But I've decided I'm not going to do that. I'm going to vote on this and vote yes, but I would really like to meet with the 360 organization and discuss and make sure that I understand some things, because I would have really liked it to have been workshopped. I would have liked for us to have had these collateral documents before I saw them at 9 o'clock last night. But this has been a strange couple of weeks, so I understand that. But at any rate, I know that Candace would be happy to meet and discuss some options and some advocacy things that I think would be a great thing for us to add to this. But it looks like we've got things in the right place.
I just had a couple of questions because it seems to me some of this is repetitive. 4.2 and 1.7 seem to be the same objective. And the other thing is, how can you guarantee that whatever press release that we release will actually be picked up by our community, by the media? I mean, how can you guarantee it'll be printed? It's great to develop weekly and monthly editorial calendars that will be shared with the communications team. Also, you talk about PTOs and PTAs. We don't have any of those. We have SDMs. We have very few. We have very few PTAs in our schools.
Every school has a PTO.
No.
What school does it?
No.
Elementary.
Venice Elementary has a PTO.
Well, that's Venice Elementary.
Garden Elementary has a PTO.
I'm telling you, Eric.
Emily Booker has a PTO.
Would you? I'm speaking. Okay. Would you mind not interrupting me?
I apologize.
As you don't like me to interrupt you?
I'm sorry.
All right. Man, I'm sorry. No matter how hard I try, I can't get through a meeting. No, last year I did. Last month. I was prepared to vote against this plan, and the reason is that because I've been asking for this plan for a month. I've been asking for the previous plan, which was a short plan. I didn't get it. I asked for this one, and an email went out this morning saying that a board member asked for this plan, and that's why I'm sending it to all of you. Well, I, as the chair, asked for this plan to be sent to every one of us so that we all had this in our hands and could look at it and read it and really make the right decision. And I don't feel like I was given that opportunity, so I am going to vote against the plan. So, any further discussion? Mrs. Ziegler?
Well, I always agree that we need, as much as possible in advance, having supportive information for anything that we go forward and vote on. I will say, though, as far as a proactive approach, since very early on, I feel as though it's been very open and communicative on this aspect, ironically on the communications piece. But so I just wanted to go on record and say that I felt dialogue has been very concise and open thus far.
Mrs. Brown?
I'd like to perhaps look to see if maybe we can look at it some more, maybe have some discussions, and if we need further discussion, perhaps put it on our workshop agenda for next month to have a more open dialogue about this. But do understand that, yeah, things kind of fell through the cracks because papers didn't get sent, and I know we've got another item coming up that I still don't have the paperwork to back it up, and I can't get it on the computer here. So I'm going to support it because what I was able to read, I haven't been able to go in depth in it, but maybe we do need to talk about it some more, and perhaps at the next workshop we could do that. You were talking about the Fifth Estate. Just to aside, one of the previous education reporters, Shelby Webb, that article that I talked about, the Houston schools adding that half hour, was written by Shelby Webb. So she too has gone from here over to Houston, along with Jeremy Wallace. So
I know, I kept up with both of them.
So.
Anyway, I really believe I would like it if we could have a workshop on this, even though it's going to be voted on today. I feel if we are truly a six-man team like we say we are, then 6 of us should have been part of this decision and not 1. So if we're 6, we need to be 6. And we need to have some input. So, okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the chair votes an aye. So the motion passes 4-1. approval of the 2017-2018 School Improvement Plan for Sunset School of Innovative Studies Charter School.
I'll move the item for purposes of discussion. We're getting a copy of it now.
Second.
No.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
Thank you.
That was my bad.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Thank you. I know we had a workshop on this, and I think that it was very clear that we felt that perhaps that the plan, there was an element that they were behind the ball, that we were able to see that they were moving towards this position of a D, and that we did in fact would be requiring this. So I think it goes without saying, I personally was disappointed that we weren't as prepared, or that SSIS was not as prepared as I felt that they should have been, given the implications and the seriousness of really taking the time to develop a plan to get them back on track. The additional issue I have is, because I have not been able to really go into depth and read this, which is a critical component of this whole process, I wanted to clarify, and I don't know if Mr. Hardy would be able to identify that, or if whether or not we could postpone this vote after we have an opportunity to read the plan, or if we are subject to a specific timeline.
I don't believe that you have a specific timeline in which you have to approve or deny. Those are the board's options, obviously, approve or deny. If you want to put this off, I believe the board can table the motion until your next meeting. Your options, when you get to the substance of it, are to approve or to deny. If you deny, you need to articulate in writing to the charter school why, what the basis is, and then give them an opportunity. You can give them an opportunity to resubmit. So if you're going to deny, for example, and say, these are the 3 things that I think we need more or better information on, and that's what we need in the resubmittal, but you do not have to take action on this today.
Mrs. Brown?
I have several questions that I had, regardless of what this improvement plan, that I would imagine goes to their board chair or somebody from their association, if they could come forward and answer the questions. My questions are in 4 different areas, and some of them have follow-up. So when I finish one, if somebody else has something, if you would...
Okay. I'm sorry.
Could you first introduce yourselves and introduce any of your board members or staff that's here, I think would be appropriate.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Nate Patton. I am the Assistant Director at Sarasota School for Innovative Studies.
Is that on? Is the little light on? Doesn't sound
It's supposed to be always on now.
All right.
It's on.
All right.
Okay, again, my name is Nate Patton. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm the Assistant Director at Sarasota School for Innovative Studies. Dr. Evans is under the weather today, and he cannot be here, so I'm sitting in for him. Introduce my SIP team. This is Miss Melindy. Behind me is our board president, Larry Robbins, Mrs. Kuhn, and Dr. Evans. Okay, question?
You normally meet once a month. And since you received this D rating, have you called any special meetings on this or increased the meetings? And, I looked out in your site and I can't find records of those meetings. But I'm looking at it on my iPad because my iPad isn't working.
We're meeting on a weekly basis. And the information you have in front of you went out on September 7th. Probably because of the storm and might have got delayed. But we wanted to make sure that you get it in your possession before this meeting.
So the staff met, but the board met the one time, I don't know, because I was just looking at the board, the meetings. But I was also looking at your budget, and it's really hard to look at a budget on an iPhone. But one of the things that, one of the things I did see about your site is that when you go into middle schools, it shows that you're an A-rated school, and when you go to your school grades, it's still showing a C grade. I'm not seeing that D grade anywhere on your website. I don't know if you haven't updated your website. And I know school districts have to actually send letters out to all their parents if we get a D grade. Did you have to do that, or are you intending to update your website?
Yes, I would definitely look into that. As it stands right now, we're having some difficulty with our computer program in our school, and I would get with our technician, make sure that it is corrected.
Did you notify your parents in any way?
I'm not sure at this moment.
I think you did.
Yeah. I think Dr. Evans sent information out to the parents on that rate.
One of the things
in our gym as well.
I did notice on your budgets, it in different than how we do ours, but one of the things it said it contemplated a 6% increase, and I don't know if that fell through or if you had to change that based on the dollars that we ended up getting. But it also said that you anticipated a $500 lease or rent payment increase, and I don't know if that was per school location or for each location. And these numbers might be incorrect, but I asked for what the rent was for all of our charter schools back in May, and I had some eyebrows raised, mine, because your schools are some of the most expensive schools in rent per square foot of any school in the district. The information I had was your monthly lease payment for the elementary campus was $12,585
a month. Yes.
That's like more than any other schools except Imagine, and that's a brand new school, and I look at your facilities there and I'm like, why are you paying that? And then I look at your middle school campus, and that was at $14,500 a month rent. And again, is that $500 on top of this? But $14,000 comes out to $2.38 per square foot per month. It's the highest per square foot rent of any charter school in our district. And I know there was some concern about even leasing that facility because one of your board members was on the board and then had to step off the board when you started to lease that building. Isn't this the building that's next to the church on Wilkinson?
No, but we did not have a board member involved in that capacity.
But basically, you're leasing a building that was already existing. But I don't know what makes this building so special that you're paying the highest per square foot lease of any school in the district, and you're running into problems. You're now getting a D grade, and instead of looking at some of these costs, you're actually adding on $500 a month addition on the lease. I mean, I'd like to know how you're spending your money to make things better for your school, your students. I have a concern about that.
But I'm wondering, I thought we were here to discuss the D grade. I didn't in our school improvement plan. Are we digressing into other areas?
Well, I would think how you spend your money would be part of what your school improvement plan are, and I would think that you would want to, I would like to see you spend more money on student achievement and student education rather than the building. What are your priorities? If your priority is having that building and paying top rent, that shows me where your priorities are.
Well, I would beg to differ on whether it's top rent or not. I'd like to see the facts, because we did negotiate both leases in a period of time where we feel that we got a good deal for our money.
I'm sure our staff can get you the cost of the leases for all of the other charter schools in the district. One other question I have, well, besides correcting your website and those scores on the website, special help. What kind of special help have you reached out to? I know the district has reached out to the school, as we did to our other Title I schools with the reading recovery. For one reason or another, your school chose not to participate. We've got summer institutes going at some of our other schools. Professional development. What kind of professional development are you reaching out to the school district to use? And I know that the other charter schools offered to, work with you on this improvement plan. I mean, did you reach out and meet with these other charter schools?
I have reached out, and I honestly haven't heard anything back from people, and I can send you the emails. I can CC you on them. I have not heard back.
And what about professional development?
Professional development, we have that. If we get that UNICEF grant, we're going to expand on that.
I would like to know more about what professional development you have used in the past and what things you have done to increase that professional development.
We've done in the past. We've done classroom management in the past. We've done, trying to think, caught me off guard.
Well, these are the areas that I'm going to be concerned about, and at our workshop we can go into those further so that you can get that information to me. That's why I wanted to ask you now. I didn't want to put you on the spot then, but I have a lot of concerns.
Mrs. Goodwin.
I find it sad that Mr. Evans isn't here today. This is really important for Mr. Evans and for your school, and he is the leader of the school, and he needs to be here, and I'm very sad that he's not feeling well and is not here. I look at this SIP, and I see a lot of vacant things in this. I know that you all turned in a report which our gracious Dr. Roca tried to give feedback on, and then a different report altogether came back to her. And I know that two people have reached out that are high-performing charter school administrators to Stephen Evans, and he has not called them back. So I find that to be sad as well. Talking about professional development, I don't see anything in here. For $2,500 from the Consortium of Charter Schools, of which you are a member, you can get all kinds of high-impact, high educational impact professional development for $2,500. And I find it very strange that you all don't know anything about that, and it's been mentioned before. In fact, we'd love to have it in our district here if there's some way that we could get a hold of some of these different programs that are available to you. That would be a really good thing. But I find a lot of fill in the blanks that aren't filled in. For example, looking in under provide data about early warning systems, the number of students by grade that are having a problem with attendance, that's something that, a truancy person should be definitely at the top of your list to get somebody to work with. If students aren't there on time and aren't there every day, they can't learn, and that's something that I would hope that you would try to incorporate into this program. But it says level 1 on statewide assessments, 135 children, and then under there indicators exhibiting 2 or more indicators, and nothing's filled in for that. And I find a lot of the document here to be, fairly almost like doing a calendar. The strategy, the who's responsible, the schedule annually, the evidence of completion, evaluation, instrumentation, yields performance data. That's not what we're talking about. We need strategies and interventions to change student achievement. That's what you all have to do. This is very, very serious. The state would not look kindly on this if you went before the State Board of Education with a plan that was as missing in the important pieces and parts as this plan is. Jeb Bush used to talk about a year's worth of progress in a year's time. And that's a very good statement to make. And I don't see that here. How many students are not doing well that are English language learners? We talked about reading recovery and how important that was, and the answer was, well, we don't have enough teachers. Well, people in the community can be trained to help you with that. And you have a lot of community involvement, and that's very, very good. But we need to have some of these people to step up to the plate and to help you with some of these very strong issues, because this is not a complete SIP, and I think we do need to discuss this at another workshop.
Mr. Robinson?
So this morning, one of the words that kept coming up was actionable. And we were talking about goals, which, a plan that we were talking about. And so actionable is important. Another A is achievable. And so if I draw your attention to an example of that, and I'll draw your attention to page 8, where you talk about your attendance below 90%. And you had 150 kids below 90%. And I also bring you to the next number, one or more suspensions, and it's 54 kids. And you later on in this document, you talk about that the thing that was the biggest catalyst to you getting a D was absenteeism and behavioral issues. Okay, so put that as a foundation of what I'm going to say. So when I talk about achievable, you're proposing that you're going to go from 150 kids absent less than 90 days to 26 to 26. You're going to go from kids that have one or more suspensions from 54. I'm looking on page 22. I'm flipping back and forth between page 8 and page 22. And your target is one or more suspensions to go from 14. I find it hard to believe that it's achievable to go from 150 to your annual target of 26. I find it hard to believe that you can go from 54 to an annual target of 14. Am I misreading this, ma'am?
I think those are percentages, the 26% and the 14%.
So your annual target is, it doesn't say percentage. So you want to have 26% of your kids missing school more than 10% of the day? That's your target?
Yes, that's
So how many kids do you have at your school?
400.
400. So it's just odd. So on page 8, is that percentages? Because that's 150.
That's not percentages.
So that's not percentage. So that's not percentages, but your target is a percentage.
That's how the plan is written.
Okay, because I don't see the word. Did I misread the word? Because I don't see the word percentage or the little symbol with the dash and the little circles.
I don't think you can put that in the plan.
Okay, so I didn't see. So your goal is to have a quarter of your kids to be absent in 10 days. Okay. The other thing that my other concern was in this document, you talked about, again, that one of the biggest factors was the absenteeism and the behavioral rates. And the way you're going to solve that, I mean, hopefully I read this right, was having aftercare programs in Saturday schools. Well, it seems to me if the kids aren't coming to school during the day, how are you going to get them coming on Saturday? You really didn't go into that. I would think that the kids who don't come Monday to Friday would be the same kids who wouldn't come in on Saturday.
I guess that was more for upping our school grade, our scores.
Oh, so because it was discussed in the part where you were talking about absenteeism, in the later on when you were talking about performances metrics. So I took that to mean, because it was under that title, that was a way that you were going to fight absenteeism.
That's not a definite thing. That's something we're going to definitely look into, as she says, a way of getting kids more involved in raising our academic score.
I just, yeah, and I want you to succeed. I want you to succeed, but I want you to have a good plan to succeed, so you guys can open it up and say, what steps do we need to do? What steps do we need to take? Are we taking these steps? Or I want these kids. God, nothing would make me happier than for you to be in a school. Nothing would make me happier than for those kids not to have another year of not learning. I want those kids. I want the same thing you want. I know you. I know that's what you want. And so I'm just here. I want to make sure that we have the right plans and the right goals, so we can reach there together. We can be at the mountaintop together. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think you do, and that's what I want. That's what I want more than anything. And I just think that this plan, I can tell you this much, Dr. Roca, I mean, she wants that too, and I just think that you need to go back and look at this plan so that you can be at the end of the year 1 year's worth of learning for 1 year's worth of growth. I want that, and I know that's what you want too. So if you could just go back and just look at this plan with fresh eyes. You know what I'm saying? Put it aside for a little bit and go back and look at it with fresh eyes and say, does this get me to where I want? Where do I want to go? And does this plan get me to where I'm going? And I think if you look at it like that, I think you're going to realize there are things that you need to change in this plan. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Could you do that for me?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Ziegler.
I know this is intense, but it's important, and I have no doubt that all intentions are in the right place with everyone in your team. I know Dr. Evans did a tremendous job presenting, and I know there's a lot of passion in there, and so. And my biggest thing, or if you go back to some of the discussion we had earlier today, is about the impact of mobility in students. And so I don't believe anyone up here wants to see your school closed down, for example, because that would have a detrimental impact on your students. However, not allowing and having high success and academic achievement within those walls is equally, if not more, detrimental. So what you're having the pushback here today is that because it is our job to oversee, but you do have your own autonomy. But when there are certain red flags that come up, it is now upon us to make sure we push you to get in line and provide and put a lot of time and work into this, because that will show that that's the commitment you're putting forward, as we would expect that same kind of commitment for our students and our teachers to provide for our students. So I don't want anyone to misread the kind of passion that's coming up for it, because it's intended and focused on the right place. And that's why I started with, I was disappointed at the last workshop. I really feel like that was you knew that was coming, and to me that wasn't taking it seriously. That was my perception. That's just the way I took it. And when I read through this, I do believe, well, only briefly, and some of the points that were made up here, I think that there's some generic, and I've read other, to be fair, I've read other school improvement plans, and it's not unique to you. Sometimes school improvement plans are pretty generic, and whether or not you're under the microscope and really being pushed to develop it with quality, that's where you are right now. And so I want to see you guys get to a successful path, and I want it more than anything for certainly the students. So, and I know you guys have been around for a very long time, so I think that from a team standpoint, I want to make that very clear that that's where the goal and the heart of this is. I believe there's a lot more work to be done, but I don't think you have the benefit of time. It's almost that your team needs to get together and take a serious, hard look at this and say, to Mr. Robinson's point, are these actionable, or are these just they look good on paper? Is that what the board wants to see? Because I think you need to have an honest discussion with each other, and then in addition, is this what we want to achieve, and how can we achieve it? Do we have the funds to do it? Do we have the right staffing? Do we have the right professional development? I think that the Saturday component was a very key point. If one, do you have the funding to support that? And two, what's the likelihood of that actually happening? So I think that, and I know the people within this community want to work together to help our students. So I believe that you have a tremendous amount of resources, specifically even in our office school choice, which I say office, but they are a mighty bunch, and not as many people in there, but they work very, very hard, and I know they believe in supporting our charter schools. So I would like to, well, I didn't make the motion, so I'd like to move this to table this discussion and move it to a workshop.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that the will of the board?
Wait.
I think you have a pending motion.
Yes.
But if there's unanimous consent, that can be withdrawn. So I think it would be appropriate for you to ask, is there unanimous consent for the motion to be withdrawn?
That's what I was just doing.
As the maker of the motion, I'd like to ask that we withdraw this motion. Unanimous.
Hearing no objection, I think you have unanimous consent to do that. Now, if someone would like to make a motion to table this matter to a date certain, that would be appropriate.
I move to table this item number 23, approval of the 2017-2018 school improvement plan for Suncoast School of Innovative Studies Charter School to a future workshop date to be determined.
Well, you can put it on the, you have an October workshop.
October workshop, would that, Dr. Bowden, would that work within their scheduling?
Yep, October 17th.
So for October 17th, Dave.
So you have a motion, needs a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Can I speak to the motion?
Discussion?
I'm hoping that Mr. Evans is here at that workshop, and hopefully he has a speedy recovery and he's able to make it to the October 15th.
Any other discussion? Cheryl, Mrs. Brown.
What I'd like before that time is a copy of your, and I'm not sure what I'm getting on the website is accurate or not, and this year's budget looks like it's intended to add 500, but it doesn't really. This is your projected budget for 2017-18 and what your actual budgets were for 16-17 and 15-16, and perhaps highlight for me any items in there that you've changed, what you've done, you've changed to increase student outcomes. If there's any, because I mean, Eric is one who's always says, you know, put your money where your mouth is. If you want to see student achievement, you invest in student achievement. So I'd like to see what budget changes you may have made to increase student achievement that'll go along with what your plan is. And I also would like to see the agendas and the minutes for those meetings from when you got your D score, and again highlight anything discussion about your D score and how the board discussed what they wanted to see changed.
Okay, all those in favor of the current motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
I would point out, Madam Chair, that you've now rescheduled this to a workshop, which is certainly appropriate. The board will need to take action eventually at a regular board meeting on whatever plan perhaps either goes to or comes out of that workshop. So it may not be timely to do that at the same October, on the same October date that you're having the workshop. So maybe that would come back to the board the first meeting in November.
6, I think it is.
You don't have to decide that now. I'm just pointing out that the workshop is not the final step in the process.
Oh, so we don't take votes at the workshop? Okay.
No, but we could take a vote in the afternoon at 3 o'clock.
I'd like to bring up that at our next workshop, we postponed the discussion on another charter school application. And I'm thinking that every month we have something from staff about their school improvement for our district. I'm wondering if maybe we need to have a special workshop on this, or if it's not going to work on the calendar. I mean, because we only have so many hours on our workshop calendars, and we might need to have a special workshop on the first Tuesday in the afternoon for either this or the new charter school, because I feel that it's going to take, I mean, we're not going to be able to, it's not a 15-minute item, and when you're adding an hour item, we only have so many hours at those workshops.
I have suggested that, and I've got no feedback that would be something we'd like to do as a board. Mr. Robinson.
I think it'd be relevant to ask Dr. Rocha, because I think that there are statutorial constraints in DOE rules about when we have to take action on the chart application, because again, they're expected to start next August. So I don't know how, if there's some sort of constraint, when we have to make our decision known in case they want to appeal. I would imagine there has to be some sort of deadline involved in that.
it was our intent, and I believe you're speaking of the Sarasota STEM pending application that was pulled from today's workshop agenda. It is our intent to do that at a regularly scheduled board meeting on October 3rd. And so we're not going to do that as part of a workshop. I know that's not part of our practice, but to give you a chance to ask questions, and then we can return to the normal timeline. And so you'll have the opportunity to receive the committee's report and ask questions of the applicants for Sarasota STEM.
So we would ask questions as we're sitting up here, or we would be...
You would ask questions as you're sitting up here. There's something that prevents you in a regularly scheduled board meeting and we could spend a good 45 minutes to an hour as we would in a regular workshop. Now, if you wish to combine this item, Sarasota STEM with SSIS, and call a special workshop, we could do that in advance of the evening workshop on October 3rd.
And when's the deadline? When do we have to make a decision by? I'm assuming that there was some sort of deadline.
Correct.
Correct, in that statutorily the board has 90 days to take action to approve or deny the charter application. The applicant, of course, they were impacted by the hurricane as well, so they were very amenable to changing and shifting the timeline. And we do have a series of events that have to follow certain time frames, and typically our committee would have the preliminary report to you before October 3rd or whenever before your workshop. And after that, we have to have our capacity interview with the applicant, followed by the final report, which comes to you at a board meeting for you to take action.
But Dr. Booker, doesn't that rule say that it has to be 90 days after we've received a completed application?
Correct.
And so if there was clarification, if we're saying things are missing or not aren't there, then it's not a completed application.
Right. The applicants typically are very willing to have a waiver on the 90 days because they know it's beneficial to them to have an opportunity to answer questions and to participate in the interviews, because those are not required. We offer those in Sarasota County just to make sure we have all the information that we need so that you can make an informed decision. So they typically never hesitate to waive the 90-day period.
Thank you, Dr. Brooke.
Mrs. Brown?
I have no problem then having the new applicant on the, we're not going to be voting on anything on October 3rd, but we'll be having the questions, and we will have time to, I mean, I haven't got the application, the review from the committee yet, but I already have a list of questions from this applicant. And I truly hope that we can get your report at least several days before the meeting so we have time to read it.
Mm-hmm. Our goal, because it is part of the regular meeting, is to, and it has to be published on the 26th. The agenda is posted on the 26th. So I think by this Friday was my target, unless you give me an extension and give me until Monday so I can work on it over the weekend. That would be awesome. No, but you will have it well before the board meeting.
Well, Friday or Monday would be fine with me. I just don't want it the Friday before the meeting.
Oh, no, ma'am. Mm-mm.
Okay. We voted on that, right? Yes, we did. Getting confused. Okay. And that was our last item on the agenda?
One more.
One more?
24.
I don't want to do
Did you get the
old item 13.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's it?
May I have a motion for item 24?
I move that the employee benefit rates and fees for the 2018 calendar year be approved by the board as presented.
Second.
Under discussion, Mr. Robinson?
Thank you. I have a series of questions to ask, so if you want me to go last, Madam Chair, I will.
You're the only one on here right now.
Okay. Mitzi, do you want me to just ask Dr. Bowden, or? These are questions I've already pre-asked.
So if you